Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for January 4th through 10th. This week I read 2 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 3 books. The first book that I read this week is Hate, Why We Should Resist It with Free Speech, Not Censorship, and it's basically what it says on the tin. It's about a 200-page book, basically laying out all the reasons why censorship laws don't actually work, because more often they are used against the people they are intended to actually protect. Essentially, you can't actually create a hate speech law that is actually narrow enough to do what you want it to do, and it's also incredibly difficult to actually prove the harm that you think that the hate speech is actually creating. This book comes with tons of examples from different countries around the world, and it does at some point feel like you're reading the same thing over and over and over again in a slightly different way, but I imagine that's also what it's like reading proposed hate speech laws, because people are trying to rewrite them and rewrite them and rewrite them in a way that will actually work, and they never end up being perfect. The next book I read is another nonfiction book, although this one was a memoir, and that's Educated. This is about a girl who grew up as the youngest of 7 children in Idaho in a Mormon family, and her siblings didn't actually go to school. Some of her older siblings went to a little bit of schooling before they were pulled out, and their dad decided they would be homeschooled. They weren't really homeschooled so much as there were a couple of textbooks in the house, and occasionally they would touch them, and that was about it. And any schooling these kids actually had at home was either hands-on, working for their mother, doing essential oils things, or working for their dad in a scrapyard. Anything else was completely self-taught, which makes it incredibly remarkable that this person went on to actually take the ACT, get a high enough score that she could go to Brigham Young University. From there, even though she had a lot to catch up on because there were certain things that she had never heard of before, and people in the school thought she was quite a jerk for saying things like, "I've never seen that word before," and they all thought she was making a very unfortunate joke, and unfortunately she was not. Her academic talents were recognized. She actually went on to do a semester in Cambridge. She actually ended up attending Cambridge after that, and then after that she attended Harvard. However, things with her home life and her family life definitely complicated, definitely violent at points. And of course her family refutes all of this, but they were refuting it in the text of the book as well. And of course they wouldn't want everyone to know all of the shenanigans that went down behind closed doors, would they? The writing in this was engaging and powerful, and I really just wanted to know what was going to happen, even though I spent so much time wanting to yell at a bunch of the men in this, because what the hell even are you talking about? As for the shows I watched this week, I watched all 6 episodes of a BritBox exclusive show called Passenger. This is about a very small town called Chatter Vale, where there's only like 4 people in the police department. And one of them, the one we're following, used to live in London but had to come to this small town because she's actually taking care of her husband's mother, even though her husband left with the carer for the mother, which is just great, and that happened like 4 years ago, so she's still there taking care of the mother. She's really interested in trying to figure out what happened with these certain things that start happening around town, like a girl going missing and then another girl going missing, and then something that some people were like, oh, it must have been a tragic accident. She's like, I don't think it was a tragic accident. I think we need to look into this as a murder. And they're like, no, there's not possibly a murder here. And it seems like the person that runs her department actually cares a lot more about getting the Best Village Award than actually doing any policing. Additionally, near the beginning of this, we know that something really weird is happening, and it seems like there might be a creature or something that they're trying to contain, but we don't actually know for sure because the show never actually shows that to us. One thing I did giggle at is that one of the other police officers referred to our main character as Vera at one point, which I laughed, 1, because I've seen that show, and 2, because this main character was also in that show. When I looked it up, I was unsurprised that it's not getting another season because I don't really know where you could go from there and make it meaningful to what you had in this first season, but it's a lot about small town corruption and weirdness. So if that's your vibe and you just want something self-contained, watch this. This week I also of course continued watching Jetlag the Game, the 16th season, which is set in the UK. They are playing tag. And all I can say, because again the episode doesn't come out on YouTube until Wednesday, is Ben has a very good plan, and unfortunately there are a few things that go quite wrong for him and right for the team that's looking for him, and that's all I will tell you. It's also kind of fantastic to see the details that these boys look at when they get different clues about where somebody could be, and they really narrow things down based on these minute little details, which end up screwing people over sometimes, which is just kind of fantastic to watch, honestly. The movie I watched this week is Wake Up Dead Man, which is the third in the Knives Out trilogy. I assume there's going to be more movies because they're wildly popular, but so far there's only 3, so I'll say trilogy. This one is set primarily at a church, and we're following this guy who used to be at a much bigger church, and now he's the second at a much smaller rural church. Kind of as a punishment, because you go through the reasons why he's being sent there, and he and the head guy at this church don't really get along. And you see that through the background sequence of this movie, which is about the first 40 minutes of this 2.5-hour movie. You're basically getting to know all of the key players, and then something happens, and then Benoit Blanc shows up and is trying to help them figure out exactly how it went down. As always with one of these movies, we've got a lot of big-name stars in there, which is always fun to see. And of course there's elements to it where you think that you've solved it ahead of time, and then you haven't solved it ahead of time, and then you see certain things come up that you're like, they wouldn't have mentioned this if this wasn't going to come up, and it comes up, but then you have to figure out why it came up, and it's a lot of fun. These movies are the types that I actually like to rewatch and let's see if I can see certain things coming, so I'm looking forward to watching this one again. As for the books I listened to this week, I did a lot of driving, which actually helped me listen to these books because when I'm driving by myself, I can listen to what I want. The first book that I listened to this week, mostly in the car, is House of Hollow. This is about 3 sisters living in the UK, and we're following the youngest of them. They are the Hollow sisters, and all of them have 4-letter names. You've got Gray, who's the oldest, you've got Vivi, who's the middle, and you've got Iris, who is the one that we're following. Also, their mom is Kate and their dad was Gabe, so they all have 4-letter names. Although I feel like she was probably Catherine and he was probably Gabriel, and they just shortened them because they wanted to fit into this 4-letter thing that they created with their own daughters. I don't know. In any case, we start this book knowing that when these sisters were very young, something happened to them. In fact, they actually disappeared for about a month and then showed back up on the streets of Edinburgh completely naked, one of them clutching a small knife, and that was it. And they didn't know where they were the whole time, and nobody was able to solve that mystery. The 2 eldest daughters left school before they finished it, but this youngest daughter is the only one left at home, and she really wants to finish school. She's also her mom's only companion at this point because the father has died, the other kids have gone away, one of them isn't even welcome in the house anymore. And then at this point where all 3 sisters are supposed to meet up because one of them has a gig in town, the other sister doesn't show up, and it becomes a mystery as to where she went. This definitely has some magic and some darkness and some trying to figure out what happened to these people, and I really loved the writing in this. It was absolutely beautiful, and I just wanted to keep going because I just wanted to know what was happening with these people. There were a couple of things I noted at the time, but I can't necessarily remember right now because I just woke up, it's first thing in the morning, that made me think that this book was written by somebody who wasn't originally from the UK, and or certain little terminologies were changed because this was a publisher from the States. I can't remember what they were now, but I did look it up, and the author is originally from Australia, although she does live in the UK now, and this was published by people in the States. So there was probably little terminology that was changed, and I only noticed it wasn't appropriate for the UK because I used to live in the UK. Let me just say, I hate stuff like that. But I have no control over publishing, so it's probably going to keep happening. The next book that I listened to is A Magic Deep and Drowning. This one takes place in what eventually becomes the Netherlands, but hundreds of years ago, and our main character is this girl who is the only child of this well-to-do couple in town. And by child, I mean I think she's actually 21 years old, but she's their only kid and she is about to be married off to somebody because that's what children are for, right? She's actually kind of excited about this because she really doesn't like living with her parents, and she's excited to become the woman of her own place so she can have some control over her own life. However, just before meeting her intended, she meets this mysterious guy who she's actually a little bit attracted to and finds kind of interesting, and then we come to find out that he is not at all what he has said that he is. I wouldn't call this a retelling of The Little Mermaid because the story is definitely very, very different. However, some of the elements are definitely the same, such as one of these people comes from the sea, one of these people comes from land, one of them is royalty, one of them isn't. Characters end up losing their voices at some point. You know, those types of elements. Not to mention it's set where Hans Christian Andersen eventually wrote The Little Mermaid. That's pretty great. This is another one where the writing was just so fluid that I just kept wanting to listen to it to figure out what was going to happen with all of these different situations and these characters, because our main character definitely went on some adventures along the way. It's also written in a way where you can guess certain things that are coming, but then you get excited that you guessed them right, as opposed to being disappointed that you're like, oh yeah, that was obvious, duh. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. The third book that I listened to this week is a novella called Graveyard Shift. This is about a bunch of insomniacs who are also smokers, so they often end up at this certain graveyard, which is near the campus of this school that they all either attend or work at or work near. This one is fun because it takes place in a single night, so these characters actually show up, it's midnight, they're smoking, and they realize there's a freshly dug hole in the graveyard, which is super weird. Additionally, we get to see the perspectives of these 4 different characters. I think it's 4, let me just think about it. Five. There's 5 characters that routinely show up, and we get to see all of their different perspectives, which I thought was really cool, especially because this is a novella, so it is much shorter than a full-length novel. Because it is fairly short, I'm not going to go into all the characteristics of these characters, but the idea of it opening with them being at this graveyard at midnight, where nobody's actually been buried here for about 100 years, and there's a fresh hole, and them just thinking about, well, that's probably for murder, because if it's a graveyard that's no longer in use, why would you dig a fresh hole there unless you were intending to put something in there? And then the mystery unravels from there. I feel like this definitely could have been fleshed out to a full novel, but at the same time I was satisfied with how this played out in this short amount of time. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!